Recorded. Okay, there it goes. So today we'll start with David. Does that work for you?
That's fine.
Okay. So everyone go on mute except for David, of course, and you can go ahead and share your screen with us and start presenting.
I'm just loading it here. Right. Hi there. My name is David Thomas, and I'd like to first thank everyone for giving me the chance to speak today. I participated in the STAR program on the Geology Field Guide with mentors Dr. Jessica Kelly and Professor Ian Brown. The purpose of this project was to research fossils that were discovered in North America from the Precambrian, the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic, and then to map those fossils onto a Google Earth tour that included the images and some descriptions so that it could be used as a tool in class as a teaching aid. And so in the project, my research period was the Precambrian. So this map here shows the site of the 10 fossils that I researched and mapped. And you may notice, although they are kind of spread across North America, they are mostly in groups. And that is intentional. Those groups, they represent areas of Precambrian crust in North America. Today, I'm going to be presenting on 3 of these sites, and they kind of represent 3 of the primary fossils you would find from that period of time. So the first is the gunflint stromatolite, which was found in Ontario, Canada. And so a stromatolite is a type of sedimentary rock that's formed by photosynthetic cyanobacteria. And so this represents one of the earliest known forms of life, a simple microorganism that had no nucleus. It's essentially all it was really capable of doing was taking in carbon dioxide and light and expelling oxygen. But in addition to that, oxygen also secreted a compound that, when it settled to the bottom of the water with these little sediment particles, it could kind of combine them into larger rocks. And this particular fossil was dated at 1.9 billion years old. And at the time it was discovered, it was the oldest kind of evidence of photosynthesis that had ever been found. In 1954, that was quite old, 1.9 billion years, but we found earlier examples at this point. But stromatolites and the following example we're going to use, BIFs, or banded iron formations, those cyanobacteria were important kind of historically because the oxygen they released is what actually introduced oxygen into our atmosphere. Before kind of cyanobacteria came along, there was no oxygen to speak of in the Earth's atmosphere. So the next site is a metamorphosed banded iron formation. So banded iron is similar in some ways to a stromatolite in that these little particles of iron are, in water and being settled in and kind of combined by these little compounds being released by the cyanobacteria. There was an excess amount of iron in the Earth's oceans in the Precambrian period. And a lot of these rocks actually appear to be green because there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. And so when this kind of oxidation or rusting that we would kind of describe today happens in an environment with no oxygen, instead of iron turning red, it kind of turns green. These layers of iron kind of got interwoven with layers of silica, just other sediment in the area. This particular site has been metamorphized. So instead of just being perfectly flat layers, this has been metamorphosed in such a way that you kind of get these folds and twists in the rock. This formation was found in Wyoming, and it was dated at 2.87 billion years old, which is one of the oldest BIFs found in history. And then the final site is Asphodela terranovicea. This is a fossil that was found in Newfoundland, right off of Duckworth Street in St. John's. In fact, this picture, you can kind of see the cliff face with some graffiti on either side, because this actually sits in a parking lot. And it was on this cliff face that they found the first body fossil from the Precambrian period, also from the Precambrian kind of era, and then the Ediacaran period. It's dated at 565 million years old. And scientists don't quite know what it was. Asphodela is a synonym for a genus of mushrooms, and they kind of give it that name because it looks kind of frond-like. It looks a little bit like a mushroom, but there's not really any agreement that it is a mushroom or really what its biology was at all. At the time of its discovery, there was a lot of disagreement that it was from the Ediacaran, but eventually enough of these fossils in Newfoundland and kind of across the world came to be found that they kind of had to be accepted that this is a type of fossil, an actual body fossil from the Precambrian period. And so, yeah, and then I have my references here. And so with that, are there any questions?
This is Anne. I had more of a comment than a question as far as that last slide you had. Was amazing that a fossil was found in that, at least to me, in that setting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there wasn't graffiti beside it back in 1920 something when it was found.
Right.
But it's, there's a apartment building up on top of that cliff, and there's a parking lot down below. It is amazing where it was located, that it's just right here on our face. People could go up and probably had seen before and didn't recognize its significance at the time.
That's neat. So Kim has a question. Her hand's up.
Yep, Kim.
Hey, David, great presentation. I wanted to ask, what got you initially interested in this kind of research?
Sure, thanks. So geology is, when I came back to Wake Tech, geology was kind of something I was interested in, thought about maybe wanting to do for a career. When I took Geology 111 with Dr. Rutsky, I was sold for sure. And so actually last semester, Dr. Rutsky had a START program that was, it's her separate START program, which is about gaming with kind of gamifying the geologic time. And so I participated in that program. It just seemed, I was excited. It seemed like it was good. And then this semester came along and I was taking historical geology, and I decided, there's another geology START program. And I kind of just want to kind of feel my way around, see what kind of, just get my toes a little deeper into different disciplines. And so I decided to participate in this program.
Great, thank you.
Well,
any other questions? Oh, cool.
Your timing's perfect. Are there any more questions? We might have time for one more.
All right, great. Well, thank everyone.
All right. Well, thank you very much. So if there are any other questions that you think of later, you can send them my way. So now I am going to introduce Aubrey Knowles. Aubrey is presenting also on the same project, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so Aubrey, take it away.
I'm going to pull up my presentation here really quick. All right, can you guys see what we want to be able to see?
I can see it.
My name is Aubrey Knowles. I also was working on the Geology Field Guide project with Dr. Kelly and Professor Brown. I'm going to reiterate at you a moment since we're on the same project, but our purpose was to create a Google Earth tour of North American fossil localities across geologic time to be used as a resource for historical geology, Geo 113, but more generally the geology classes here at Wake Tech. My piece of this project was to conduct secondary research on 10 Mesozoic fossil localities. You can see the map. This is what I came up with. The Mesozoic is the period of time from roughly 250 million years ago to about 66 million years ago. You can see that there's these sites are skewed to Western North America really significantly. The one site in the North Carolina is from Genly, really close to here actually, but the fossil record for the Mesozoic is very, very poor in Eastern North America. But I don't have time to go through all of these, but I would like to highlight 3 of the sites that I conducted research on for this project. The first is Eryctodromeus cubicularis. The holotype site is in Beaverhead County, Montana. This is from the Blackleaf Formation, which dates to about 95 million years ago. This was on a floodplain as the depositional environment. This is a new genus and species of small ornithischian dinosaur, little herbivorous dinosaurs that were probably bipedal. But most notably, more than the new species of dinosaur, it's the first trace fossil evidence of dinosaur burrows. So there's 3 skeletal individuals that have been found in a sandstone, like tube-like structure with kind of like a knob at the end, filled with sandstone, which is interpreted to have been probably a flood that washed in and killed these animals and filled what is interpreted to be their burrow. So if that's true, it has some interesting implications because it's the first evidence we have of dinosaur burrows, and it might also indicate that these 3 animals were a family group. It's 1 adult and 2 juvenile individuals. So this site has some interesting implications for dinosaur behavior and shows how much you can learn from trace fossils. Sometimes you get more information from those than skeletons. Second site is the Borealopelta Mark Mitchellii holotype locality. This is in Alberta, Canada. It comes from the Clearwater Formation, which dates to about 110 million years ago. And the Clearwater Formation actually represents a marine environment, which is interesting because Borealopelta definitely did not live in a marine environment, so it was probably transported post-mortem. This is a new genus and species of nodosaur dinosaur. So this is an armored dinosaur that's really similar to the very famous Ankylosaurus dinosaur with all these bony projections off of it and a club on its tail. So nodosaurs are very similar, but they don't have the club tail. They are covered in these bony osteoderms, and they're commonly called the armored dinosaurs. This specimen was remarkably preserved, and it's been dubbed a dinosaur mummy, which is a name frequently given to specimens that have extensive soft tissue preservation. This specimen has the keratin sheaths on its spikes and its bony armor plates intact. It has fossilized gut contents, which have led researchers to believe that it preferentially ate ferns and may have been foraging in an area that was recovering from forest fires because it has charcoal in its gut contents. And even more remarkably than those, it's one of the only dinosaurs that we have a color reconstruction for. So researchers were able to look at certain chemical compounds on the fossil and use that to infer its in-life pigmentation, and they think that Borealopelta was probably kind of a rusty orange-red color. This is a pretty new approach and thing that can be studied. I don't know 100%, but I'm pretty sure that the first time it was done was around 2010. And many of the other handful of dinosaurs that it's been done on are feathered dinosaurs. This is one of the very first non-feathered dinosaurs that we have a good idea of what color it would have been in life, which is really exciting and really interesting that even though paleontology has been happening for however many years, we are still discovering brand new things. Third site is the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. This is located in Emery County, Utah, comes from the Morrison Formation, dates to about 149 million years ago. This was also a floodplain dominated by meandering streams during the Morrison Formation, but it was seasonally arid as well. The Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry is notable because it's the mass death site of over 40 Allosaurus fragilis individuals. This is a large-bodied theropod dinosaur, so think long tail, 2 legs, carnivorous, roughly the body plan of a T-Rex. That's kind of a gross oversimplification, but it gets the point across well enough. And this site is interesting because it has an inflated predator to prey ratio of 3:1, which is not really something that you see naturally in any ecosystems today. So it's been interpreted as more likely than not a preservation bias and not a reflection of the actual makeup of the ecosystem. There have been a couple of different hypotheses for what caused this preservation bias. For many years, the prevailing hypothesis was that this was a predator trap scenario where a prey animal would get stuck in viscous mud and either dead or dying would attract a predator, which would also become entrapped in the viscous mud, which would attract more predators, and it's this positive feedback loop that causes this preservation bias. Another hypothesis has been posed that this is related to drought-related fatality, where this area was a watering hole that was known to these animals. In a time of drought, they flocked here when the watering hole was dried up, and then this population density influx kind of collapsed the surrounding ecosystem. As of now, I don't think that there's a definitive answer to which hypothesis is more likely, but it is an area of active research and an interesting site. These are the references for that research, and I would love to take any questions that you have.
Kim has a question.
Hey, Aubrey, such a nice presentation. You know, I was very intrigued by the map that you showed in the beginning with the Mesozoic fossil record. Why do you think the record is so poor in North America?
Yeah, so during a lot of the Mesozoic, North America was bisected by a western interior seaway. So there were actually two land masses. In the west, Laramidia, and where we are in the east, it was Appalachia. And for some reason, the fossil record of Laramidia is much, much better. Part of it is that just the rocks in eastern North America aren't the correct age for Mesozoic fossils, and then the ones that we do have are not in good areas for like collecting fossils. If you like picture, I don't know if you've like are super familiar with paleontology, but the mental image is like the deserts and the Badlands and like things are eroding out of the cliffside. That isn't what it's like over here. So we don't have dinosaurs like eroding out of the cliffs. And the depositional environment over here, a lot of our fossils tend to be reworked. They're either from fluvial deposits or they've been deposited on like a delta, and they're bone fragments that have been transported from somewhere else. What comes to mind is Hypsibema is, I think that there's currently a petition to make it the North Carolina state dinosaur, but it was named based on a single bone. It's just a vertebra. Like this is our hadrosaur dinosaur that lived here. So there aren't these really well preserved specimens from the East Coast nearly as much as there are from the West. Sorry, that was probably a much longer answer than you wanted.
No, it was very interesting, and I actually have a bit of a follow-up question.
Yes.
So if you were to study this time period, where on Earth is the best place to find samples from this era?
Well, so this project specifically focused on North America. So if I'm limiting my answer to the scope of the project, I think that there's something fascinating about Appalachia just because so little work has been done on it. I work as an educator at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences, and I am frequently frustrated with how little information there is about local dinosaurs. So I would want to explore, I think, this side of the Western Interior Seaway. There are a couple of interesting specimens, like two partially articulated animals come to mind. And that the one picture on my overview of localities that was from North Carolina isn't even a dinosaur. It's Postosuchus, which is a distant crocodile relative from the early Triassic. So we do have some early Triassic material from the East Coast, but during that time, dinosaurs weren't quite as prevalent yet. So you get things like phytosaurs, which are a crocodile relative, and Royasuchians, which are a crocodile relative. Other things from the time period, but not necessarily.
Interesting. And I guess if you were to take it a step further and broaden the reach of the project, where is like the pristine prime place to find these fossils?
China is fun. They have there's like really fine volcanic ash, and that's where you get like the feather imprints of feathered animals. So Inchiornis, lots of like mid-Jurassic small feathered dinosaurs are coming out of China lately. So that's been an area of really fascinating discovery. I know that Germany has some really nice preservation of feathers as well, like Archaeopteryx. So I would say China is my short answer.
Very interesting. Thank you so much.
And Aubrey, I did have a question as well. So you'd mentioned that your first slide, there were small dinosaurs. Are they the little feathery ones that you're talking about, like in China, or?
So they're not, we cannot definitively say yes for, or Eryctodromeus falls into this category of dinosaurs. They are ornithischians. There's a major divide in the dinosaur family tree. Saurischians are lizard-hipped dinosaurs, which are theropods, and sauropods, which really kind of counterintuitively are the ones that birds are more closely related to. The lizard-hipped dinosaurs are related to birds. And then there are ornithischians, bird-hipped dinosaurs, which are kind of doing their own thing. We have direct evidence of feathers in Saurischian dinosaurs. Eryctodromeus is an ornithischian dinosaur. So you kind of have to do this phylogenetic bracketing thing to decide how likely it is that something had feathers. Like the ancestor of theropods probably was feathered, but we don't know necessarily that the common ancestor of Saurischian dinosaurs and ornithischian dinosaurs was feathered. A lot of researchers, I think, lean in that direction, that it probably goes further back down the family tree, but we don't have the direct fossil evidence to say that this group of animals that Eryctodromeus was in would have been feathered. It's an area that calls for speculation. Sorry, you're muted.
When you say small, how big would those have been there at that first site?
If I remember, somewhere around 9 feet long, I believe. I don't have it written in my notes. That's something that I almost said, and every time I practiced that presentation, like, I need to look up the exact length, and then I never did.
Sorry.
Usually
you have my email.
They're about 9 feet long, but that for dinosaurs is really kind of misleading because so much of them is this long tail.
Right.
So
right.
It's a 9 foot long animal, but not the way that we would think about a 9 foot long animal.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was really interesting. Both of you had great presentations. I really enjoyed both of them. So I'm going to post a link back to our program session. And I think that will do it. I will stop recording. And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you, guys.